Look, the truth is that probably 99.9% or something ridiculous like that of people experienced and suffer from broken parent syndrome. What does that mean? It means that almost everybody was born into a situation, into a family where the mother was carrying ancestral burdens, unresolved wounds of the previous generation, who were carrying the wounds, the scars, the suffering, the hopes, the dreams, the failures, the successes of the previous generation and the previous generation. And the father was also suffering from the same thing, from the same ancestral wounding of the father, of the grandfather. This is how the generational wound gets handed down through generations. Most generations, if you think about it, just going back a short distance, it was very tough, it was very hard. And it still is very tough and it is very hard. And they don't have the opportunity and haven't had the opportunity, each generation, to really look at their own wounds and heal their own wounds and resolve the issues of human suffering for themselves, because they've been too wrapped up in the cultural problems, the personal problems, the wounds, the survivalism itself. Survivalism itself. You don't have to go back many generations to see that the root cause of many problems wasn't really psychological so much as it is now. It was the raw bones of how am I going to survive and what happens when I get sick. What am I going to do for money or food or shelter? The basic, and in that are all of the cultural problems, back into history of wars, conflicts, cruelty of people to each other, and etc., etc. I'm not painting a bleak picture, but I'm just painting it in the way that needs to be said, really. We need to recognize this, that every generation suffers in its own way. And so when we're born into this existence, in a way, we're not even born as a blank slate, are we? We're born already with a certain genetic imprint, with a certain cellular DNA memory, vague maybe, not direct, but a certain imprint, yes, let's say, from previous generations. That's why they say the wounds of the father will be visited on the children. That's not just an overt statement, it's also a statement about how we do carry the wounds of the previous generation, who are also carrying the wounds of the previous generation and the previous generation, back into the mystery of who it is, of where we come from, of who we are. How did it come to be that you've arisen as this? Well, where did it start? Nobody knows. In many ways, nobody knows. And so the broken mother, broken father situation that impacts us so much on this journey through life, on the spiritual journey, on just the journey through life, the human experience. But we have to see that their brokenness wasn't their choice. Their wounding wasn't their choice. They made choices, they did things. Most people are victims of the previous generation, and we have to be aware of that I'm not even saying what to do about it, apart from become extremely aware of it. And in that awareness, one starts to be more discerning, less blaming, more compassionate, even though it's difficult, because we see our parents really as the what? As the great tormentor, as the inflictor of wounds, and they have been, to certainly, either directly or indirectly. Most people are broken, I'm afraid to say. Most people who haven't faced their pain, their suffering, their wounding, their, the masculine wounded historically, the feminine wounded historically, the wound of the father passed on from the grandfather, from the grandfather, from the grandfather. Whatever those traits are, handed on with a certain mutation in each generation. And the wound of the mother, of the mother, of the mother, of the grandmother, of the great-great-grandmother, the wound, handed on with a different arrangement in each generation, but essentially still the same wound. And so it is for us in awareness to see that, to use this opportunity, because we are in a different generation. Most people aren't now, many are of course, but many aren't having to scrabble just for survival and getting the food. Of course, many are, which is tough. But we have a psychology now. We have a spiritual psychology. It's become part of the culture. It's not outside culture, although some people still don't recognize it as being real or true. But it is real and it is true. A spiritual psychology. And that means to see clearly, to make steps, to take steps, to do whatever it takes, to start clearing up the karma of the previous generations, of the mother wound and the father wound. And you find that, by taking responsibility for that and clearing it up, something strange happens on a certain quantum level that I can't even give a name to or describe in a certain way. But it seems to be that some of that healing, that taking responsibility now and waking up to it now and seeing the patterns now, sends some information on some mysterious quantum level back through generations. And so the healing becomes not just my healing, but their healing as well, even if they're not alive. Strangest thing. And so be the one to see, be the one to stop the endless, habitual, generational passing it on. And it is difficult because we're caught in generational, ancestral patterns that dominate us, that influence us secretly or overtly. And we play those out. And I'm telling you, it's a really good thing to start opening that up, to see what the wounds were and what has been passed on to you as an influence, and whether you can find it in yourself to bring that momentum of ancestral burden, of ancestral wounding to an end somehow, because there's the greatest healing both for the self and for the generational line in that, and for future generations should you have children. This is a great opportunity to fall into presence and awareness and compassion and love, not as things but as states of being. But first we have to see. We have to see the wounded mother, the wounded father, the wounded grandmother, the wounded grandfather. Wounds and wounds and wounds. And that's not a miserable tale. It's just the story of the human condition. And amongst all of that is great joy and great love and great, got you here. It got you here. Whatever happened back there, it got you here. And this is a good place to be, because you get to taste existence, such as it is, even with its pain and suffering and wounding. You get to taste some aspect of existence. There is a joy and a beauty in that. Honour it by seeing the wounds that have got you here, the wounds and joys, the suffering and the joy, the failures and the success, and to depersonalize it on a certain level, to depersonalize the wound on a certain level without bypassing it. The world, in many ways, my friend, is the wound. Existence is the wound.